Founder Culture, the podcast for founders and startup leaders who understand that building a business may be hard, but building a team, now that's where things get tricky. I'm Romaine Wright, founder of Just Right Consulting LLC and creator of Thrive or Derive. In every episode, I take one real team issue, break down the behaviors driving it, and provide strategies on how to fix it. Welcome to the show. So today's episode is called You Escaped the 9 to 5, but your team hasn't. Now, I'm going to say that I know there's going to be some folks out there that hear this and are like, what are you talking about? This isn't a problem. But it is. And if you don't think it is, it might be you who needs to think about this a little bit more deeply. So let's jump in. Imagine this. You're in a team call, energy's high, business is good, and everyone is excited. You feel proud, a sense of freedom even, because you're self-made and this is your business and it's thriving and everyone's on board. Now you say in this call, almost jokingly, I'll never go back to a 9 to 5. That corporate life just is not for me. People laugh, a couple of people might smile, and some of them may not think twice about that comment, but others may perceive it very differently. Why? Because they are the 9 to 5 that you're so proud that you escaped. Now, the issue here is not that you need to consider how people respond in your team to the things you say, but it does bring up a question. When you speak about being an entrepreneur, what are you really communicating, especially to your team? So that's what we're going to talk about today. The challenge here is that founders leave corporate environments for very real reasons. They want autonomy. They want ownership. They want to build something and invest their time into something that reflects their own vision and interest instead of someone else's. And I get it. I'm here with you, right, as an entrepreneur. All of that is valid. All of that is commendable. So the problem or challenge is not sharing your journey. It's also not celebrating entrepreneurship. You should do that, right? Your team should understand how you got to where you are and be informed about your journey. The challenge comes up when ownership and being an entrepreneur becomes the only version of success that you celebrate. And when you talk about corporate structure as something that you escaped, it makes the 9 to 5 look like something that's less ambitious, something that's thinking small or complacent. And that is not the message that you intend to send to your team. I promise you it's not, and I know that it's not. But sometimes that can be the message that lands. So that's the challenge with using that kind of language. Now let's dive into the behavior. I know that every founder has a story about how they got to where they are, and that story really matters. Not just because it's inspiring, like you share it openly because you want to inspire others, and you may, but the story also matters because it teaches your team how you, their manager, their leader, the CEO of the company they work for, how you interpret success. That's what your entrepreneurial journey tells them. It's got challenges, it's got successes, and as they hear you tell it, they're getting an understanding of what you think success looks like. Now, in the context of this conversation, the behavior we're talking about is story framing. And story framing means a few things, but regarding this topic, we're talking about it as how you describe your entrepreneurial journey in contrast to how you talk about employment. And that's again important because your employees are the 9 to 5, right? They are employees. You're the entrepreneur. And telling your journey isn't just about the journey, but it's the narration around it. For example, you could say, I left corporate because I wanted more ownership. Or you could say, I felt stuck. I can't stand that 9 to 5 life, right? Both may be true, and both probably are true, but they frame employment very differently. And it's the language that you use that tells the story and gives meaning to what the listener should take away from your journey, your story, and what you've shared. Now, again, the behavior here is story framing. And when you describe entrepreneurship as freedom and employment as confinement, right? I'm trapped in this 9 to 5. You're unintentionally creating tension in your team. You could be making people feel like they're not valued and that you don't appreciate their work. And you may even be belittling their choice to be employees instead of entrepreneurs. Again, all messages I know that you don't intend. And that's why I'm recording this episode, because the language that we use is so very important. We just had an example of this actually in the news with the new McDonald's burger and the CEO calling it a product. And there was lots of conversation about how that language affected the audience, right? Us out here in the world who may or may not eat McDonald's, but calling it a product, a burger, a product does not make you want to taste it. So that is why language is so important and why we can engage in this reset. So how do you address the way that you describe, share, talk about, narrate your entrepreneurial journey? The solution is to tell your story from a new perspective. So instead of framing your journey into entrepreneurship as an escape, you want to frame it as alignment with what works best for you. So instead of saying, I could never go back to a 9 to 5, you could say, I realized I'm wired for ownership. See the difference? Right, that first one, I could never go back to a 9 to 5. It elevates you by deriding the structure of the 9 to 5 job. But the second one, I realized that I'm wired for ownership. That honors your way of working without dismissing someone else's, right? So we're talking about shifting our language to alignment language when we're talking about our entrepreneurial journey. And when we use alignment language, it creates more than one version of success and ambition. And that's what's important. You want your employees to believe they can succeed even in the 9 to 5. They don't have to be entrepreneurs to be successful, to demonstrate that they're driven and ambitious. Using alignment language also expands the definition of what ownership is. We've all heard, especially if you've worked a 9 to 5, own your work. I want you to be an owner. But if you are an employee, it's hard sometimes to figure out what that means, especially if you're hearing that ownership means being an entrepreneur, and that's how I've escaped the 9 to 5. So again, when we use alignment language, it redefines what ownership means and then allows us to understand that within this 9 to 5, I can be an owner. I can own outcomes. I have the freedom to suggest improvements. I can own my own growth and development, and I have freedom to think and execute in my work without being micromanaged because I'm owning my work, right? So again, we've got to create that space, and we do that by using alignment language. Now, here's the thing I really want to point out, because, there's lots of different types of leadership out there, different definitions and all of that. But making this seemingly small shift is the essence and heart of what being a mature leader looks like, growing as a leader, because you're not asking your team to want what you wanted. You are actually allowing them to fully own their decision to be employees by using language that respects that choice instead of belittles that choice. Because let me tell you something else you may not have thought of. If your only version of success is entrepreneurship, what you're telling your employees is they need to quit because it's not successful to be an employee. You need to be an entrepreneur. And if you lose your best people because you're sending that message, you'll be continuously having to refill those positions. And today, as I'm recording this in April of 2026, it costs an average of $45,000 to replace an employee. Up to $200,000 if they're a senior level leader. And I know you don't want to continue to spend that kind of money when you can just simply change your language. Okay. So what's the takeaway? What do I want you to walk away from this episode with? Know that entrepreneurship and employment are both choices. Be proud of your journey, but also be mindful and respectful in the way that you frame it. The story that you tell about your success teaches your team how they should measure theirs. And having the awareness of the language that you use is real and true leadership. Now, if this episode resonated with you and you are ready to become a more effective leader, hop in the show notes and download the leadership playbooks. You can use them immediately and take immediate action to develop and grow yourself. And if you want some help, you can find my contact information in the show notes as well. Happy to have a chat with you and see how we can help you move forward. Until next time, build trust and results will